Good afternoon, Patriots, and welcome to the 58th audio chat on the Q News Patriot Rumble Channel series. I am the Q News Patriot, coming to you with an incredible powerhouse group out of Virginia. My name is SG Anon. One of the most important discussions we can have along this great awakening path and towards the journey of reclaiming our Constitution is the concept of jurisdiction. We have existed in a fake, phony, false jurisdiction for a very long time. We, the people, are the empowered sovereigns under God, and we are the agents and distributors of the law, holding one another accountable in mercy, compassion, and indemnification. Our elected pulpits have forgotten this and have gotten away from this in a tremendous fashion since the 1871 coup that essentially destroyed the Republic of these United States. Remarkable people all around the country are moving in directions to reclaim areas of common constitutional law, which is itself a different jurisdiction than corporate admiralty maritime law. And no more is this true than this group here out of Virginia Beach. Candidate for sheriff and de jure sheriff Aldo, Victor, Miss Pamela, and Master Sergeant Stagg. Retired. Thank you very, very much for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Absolutely.
Well, it's really good to have you all on, and I'd actually like to get started, if I could, with Victor in the background. As I understand it, there is an effort undertaken by your group and others that are seeking to reclaim the arena, the jurisdiction, and really the control of the constitutional common law grand jury. And so it's my understanding that Mr. Aldo is moving in that direction and has been heavily persecuted in Virginia by those standing authorities at the moment, and you all have sort of come along ancillary to the fight. Do you care to start us out with how you know the Sheriff Hopeful Aldo?
Yeah, so I actually met Aldo in the middle of the same thing. My due process, in the middle of the divorce. Aldo, his uncle, Frank, the Poli, is big in the wrestling scene. And Frank put us together. He says, "Hey, I know somebody going through something very similar." And he brought me to the first witness of persecution against Aldo a couple of years ago. So, and we've been supporting each other back and forth. Actually, Aldo just witnessed a case dismissed where I was getting persecuted through a divorce as well, the same divorce that I was speaking of in the city of Newport News, which was dismissed about 3 weeks ago now. So
Remarkable. Miss Pam, if you don't mind to opine, how have you come to the fight?
I've been in the fight since, well, actually before the lockdown, pandemic and the lockdowns. I'm a critical care nurse. I've been part of the Liberty Lovers group. It's an activist group led by Shaylee Roth here in Virginia Beach. Heather is one of our Constitution of States de jure representatives or whatever. She's been trying to get as many people signed on to. I don't know enough about that part of the world, but she's been trying to get a lot of people switched over to the right side of the Constitution, or the original Constitution prior to 1871. Can't remember Heather's last name, but she's been working with, I think, Michael Clark. Oh, it's Heather Bingham and Michael Clark, I believe, for quite some time. So I've been overseeing the messaging going back and forth between them. I've been so focused on the medical side of things, trying to help save as many COVID patients during that mess as I could, working with Dr. Merritt and Dr. Corey and the Virginia Medical Freedom Alliance with Dr. Sheila Fury here, and the frontline doctors and frontline nurses. So we've been busy with our hair on fire until about 6 months ago. Things seem to be quieting down. But now I'm just trying to focus on what I think is most important here in the closing months leading up to the November election. And Shaylee called out for some help today for us to come in and support Aldo for sheriff. So that's what I'm here for.
Powerfully spoken. Master Sergeant Stagg, how about yourself?
Yes, I am considered definitely a digital soldier. I entered the fight right after the election theft of November of 2020. I shortly thereafter, I just began digging and researching and finding truth. I created a private group on Telegram called the Foxhole, and I have a couple dozen real proud, hard-fighting patriots in there, and we are just disseminators of truth. We find what the great deceptors of the deep state are doing, and we are crushing their narrative. When we find these truths that they don't want spread, we spread them, and you know, it helps to take them out of the fight by watering down and changing their narrative to what it should be. And I am my connection with Aldo is I moved to the Virginia Beach area when I was 9 years old, 1978, and Aldo lived across the street and over one house from me, and he was the very first person I met after I moved here from a small town up north. And you know, we've been you know, we became really good friends through school, and life separated our ways, and very recently through divine intervention we've reconnected, and I discovered the fight that Aldo has been fighting, and it just paralleled everything that I have been researching and learning and spreading over the past couple of years of you know, who the deep state Khazarian actors are that just run our world, and they're in control of everything. And it looks like that the courts and the juries are the epicenter of where this fight needs to be fought. So when I found that out with Aldo, I've been here with him, and I'm just here to do where God sends me.
The small town story of the American dream. What a remarkable connection, all of you. And coming to our guest of honor, Mr. Aldo, thank you very much for joining us today. It's very much appreciated. I know you're a busy man. If you don't mind to tell our audience a little bit about your background and how you've come to this fight and what the efforts are now, it would be greatly appreciated.
Yes, sir. Thank you, SC, for what you do. This started for me in the courts 4 years ago. August will be 4 years. But the reality is we are just part of a continuum of the battle between good and evil, and it waxes and wanes. I've been fighting successfully, and by grace and providence gotten to this point, but I've identified a few things to sort of lay out for your watchers. Let me plug some websites that I've got going on that'll help people. If you go to flashjury.org, that's a good starting point. A couple years, 2.5 years ago, I had some of these lanyards made, and I got citizens to come start attending these hearings, not as a juror between the plaintiff and defendant or the respondent, and but moreover our court system, so that they could with knowledge witness what was going on. And I have affidavits and so forth related to the federal part of this fight from Flash Jury attendees. There were a bunch of them in the courtroom today. From there, I decided after getting unlawfully incarcerated for 4 days in October 2023 to run for sheriff. I had been previously hired to become a deputy sheriff of Virginia Beach in 2022 as part of my journey here to get to truth, because I realized that the law is not the problem. The law is beautiful. The problem is that evil has usurped or taken it over through what I would call a bar mafia association, and I label them loosely as the Praetorian Guards for deception in our reality. From that site, I started something called Court of Public Awakening. That is a focal site. If you go there, you can, for instance, see the documents from today's presentment and everything else. I'd encourage your followers to stay tuned into the Court of Public Awakening particularly. And from there, we also started a site called courtcomplaints.info. Across many states, if not all the United States, there's a bar association and judicial associations. And when a citizen has a complaint with a court, meaning the judge just didn't make like an odd mistake, but they make like serious mistakes, either ignore the code or they're violating procedure, or they're treating people unfairly, particularly if you find yourself pro se in our courts. A lot of citizens will send in a complaint that will end up getting denied with a boilerplate denial. In fact, in Virginia, there are about 5,000 complaints a year, and we know from their own statistics, over 83% of them are denied. So just imagine if 83% of the citizens that called 911 for assistance got a pre-recorded message that said, help is not coming. That's the back end of how our judicial system runs. I spoke to a gentleman named G.R. Mobley a week before last, and he helped me understand that the reality we're living in is what's called a judicial kleptocracy, which means that because the accountability systems or mechanisms in our courts are broken, that you're wasting your time to have legislators. They pass these laws and then the judges do what they want. They legislate from the benches. And there's a tight connection between a lot of our legislators and our and our court officers, because a lot of them have a bar education. And, you know, I said earlier that it's a bar mafia situation, and there is literally organized crime elements to it with aligned interests and whatnot. You know, an attorney lies and a judge ignores it, and then a judge lies, and then a couple other judges ignore it, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in a life of a twilight zone. And this gets very serious for many people. There's another resource I'd point your viewers to. It's called Divorce Court. And it was a movie, award-winning movie done in 2015. And Joseph Swords is the producer, and he's allowed me to use his content. But if you watch the video on YouTube, just the trailer, it makes a few startling things very clear. That family law is so badly broken in the United States that it's responsible for more violence than any other area of the law. And it is a $50 billion a year industry in the United States and growing. And the reason for that, when you really think about it fundamentally, all the wealth and all the assets, whether it's land or equity or whatever it is and what form it is owned by people at the end of the day. Even if they're parts through organizations, they own shares and interests in it. 50% of marriages end in divorces. That means that theoretically 50% of the assets of the country flow through these court systems. And when you end up in a family law matter, they open up your ledger or your personal assets, and then they start figuring out how they're going to divide it up. And it becomes a situation where there's an incentive for these bar members to pour gas on these fires. And so instead of operating in the interest of the litigants to resolve matters that they can't seem to resolve on their own, they actually steer things in a way that they just, bill you and pad things. And so that's a real roundabout. But there's some more details we'll cover off. I'll hand it back to you, sir.
Well, that really underscores, I think, the nature and the flavor of the discussion today around jurisdiction, common law, maritime law, and this concept of aligned interest and profit. We live in a commercialized fake court system, unfortunately, here in the United States, and many of us around the country, and I would venture a guess all of us, have never really understood this until the very recent times. We've never had access to the proper information, and those that have been essentially handled by the system have not been able at any point in time to truly get that message out in a connected way. So I want to take that and steer that to the efforts that you all have been doing and what occurred just this morning. It's my understanding that the circuit that you all live within and the arena, the district that you all live within out there in Virginia Beach conducts a grand jury impaneling twice a month. And it's also my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong, that the intention today on the 1st of July in 2024 was to get the attention of that grand jury with some of the evidence surrounding this type of kleptocratic corruption that you referenced a moment ago. Is that a correct understanding? And if so, can you all please give me a summary of what happened?
Sure, I'll start us off, and then I'll hand it off to whoever wants to pick up, because I got forcibly removed from the courtroom. But on June 4th, I filed on behalf of myself and 12 plus John and Jane Does, who at that time remained unnamed because of security concerns, a emergency expedited open petition to stop bar mafia actions, issue a writ of mandamus, or impanel a special grand jury in the Circuit Court of Virginia Beach. It's CL 24-2865. It's all on the website for people to read. It lays out a story of this, if you will, RICO activity by the bar mafia in Virginia Beach, which led to the unlawful swearing in of a sheriff after the elected sheriff left his term early back in 2023. And the Virginia Code's quite clear when there's more than 12 months left on that term that you have to have an election. And for some reason, they bypass all that. And the code says that that decision is supposed to be made by the city council or an order of the court. None of that exists. We FOIA'd all that information. They just ignored us. And today, I put this together in the form of a presentment, which is the process to get it to the grand jury, because it's become clear that the Supreme Court of Virginia has been sitting on this since it was filed June 4th. They've gone past the 21 days of normal response time. So you end up in a situation where it triggers a default situation, which was labeled and it was laid out in the presentment for the grand jury. We went in, they impaneled the grand jury. And at the right moment, after the grand jury was charged, I stood up as point of order to present the presentment, and that's when I got swarmed by the sheriffs. They were aware we were coming. We gave them proper notice as required in the system, so they knew we were coming. And we had, if you will, gone to the prior grand jury session just to scout what was going on, just two of us. So we kind of had an understanding that they were mismanaging the grand jury. They're running the grand jury to rubber stamp indictments. And I would say to any soul that has been indicted by the Circuit Court of Virginia Beach for sure, but possibly any other court in the state of Virginia, to get your indictment looked at, because it was probably done in error procedure. There is an element of the grand jury process that is there to help the citizens. It is the fourth column of government belonging to the citizens, to help the citizens have authority to keep our government in check, all other three branches. I sent to you the grand jury handbook from Virginia itself, from the Supreme Court of Virginia, which under Section 5 gives you a detail of the history of the grand jury, and going back to the Magna Carta from Europe, which did transfer through our Bill of Rights. A critical component of the grand jury is to keep the ruler or the king at that time, but now our government in check, to provide an outlet for the citizens to bring their grievances to get these issues addressed. And that's what this presentment was today, that they would not let me bring. In fact, I got swarmed by a group of sheriffs, and they, physically removed me from the courtroom. They would not arrest me. They arrested me last year. They didn't want me in their jail because I'm a candidate. But they took me out of the building and said I could not return to the building that day. Fortunately, there were other people from the flash jury group and others that stayed behind, and I'll hand the bar off to whoever wants to take the story from there.
How we asked the deputy when the judge was gonna come back.
Right, you go ahead with it, you took notes on it.
Yeah, so basically, during the hearing, after the Aldo was removed, the judge, he apologized. He says, I apologize for the interruption. He actually came out of his own, he said out of his mouth that the jury members will be, sent off. They're going to meet, and then he said exactly they will reconvene, and then they will be expected to come back together. While we sat there waiting for them to come back out, we approached the sheriff's deputy. His name was
Redmond or Rupert?
Rupert, Sergeant Rupert. We asked, he saw his camera was on, just the time we asked that he turn it on. It's pretty important to have it on. He said to us that he wasn't coming back out. You guys are wasting your time. The judge isn't coming back out. Which prompted a specific question by me of normal protocol. So is this, are you speaking on what happens under normal circumstances? And that's what he told us. Yes, he's not coming back out.
But we didn't trust that he wouldn't come
Yeah,
back,
we
because
didn't
he told
trust.
us he would deliberately come back.
Yep.
And then they'd have the jurors read off one by one, right?
Yes.
Whether they felt it was a just case. or
Yeah, so
whether
if you go into the manual, the circuit court's manual, I'm sorry, the state court manual for grand juries, they're supposed to discharge the grand jury. So after they're done doing their deliberations in private and the indictments are processed, they come out, and I'll read it to you. It says, after all the bills of indictment have been considered, the judge will ask if any member of the grand jury believes that a special grand jury should be called to investigate any condition which tends to promote criminal activity in the community or by any governmental authority, agency, or official. That's the component I said earlier about the role of the grand jury being the fourth column of government for the people to keep the other three branches of government in check. And he did not do that. And in the grand jury session that we went and checked out on the 17th, that didn't happen either. So I guess what I'm going to reiterate is our grand juries have been taken from us, and they're being used to rubber stamp indictments, not even procedurally correct, but there's no component what they're supposed to be doing, which is to be a check for the people, as evidenced today by them forcefully removing me from the grand jury room, but also in doing what they did to Victor here and not telling them they're not coming out when in fact they ended up doing that, but they didn't handle it properly.
Yeah, so at which point the deputy swore to us he wasn't coming out, and maybe an hour later, after coming back from the restroom, I decided to go into the judge's office. And I pushed the button for his secretary, a secretary, and she came on and she said that he'll be back out and the sheriff's deputy will tell you, when. And at this point I said, ma'am, well, he specifically told us that he was not coming back out. And at which point she said she got direct orders from the judge himself that he will be back out. So we went and he actually did come back out. I personally believe he came back out because he knew we were all sitting there. That's the only reason he came back out, because he knew that we would be there until 5 p.m. Until the courts closed, and then he walked us out.
But each time that we tried to go in, they kept sending us away, telling us we had to be solicited. Is
Yeah,
that the word they used?
Yeah. But then when we asked the deputy himself, well, can you come out and tell us when the judge comes back out? He could tell us, no, I'm not gonna do that.
So let me try to help SC Anon on procedure from what I read in the common law. Whatever's presented to a grand jury should be done on the record with a court reporter. But when the grand jury needs to deliberate, they are sequestered in that private deliberation room, and that is all private. If the grand jury has a question, they come out of the deliberation room, they ask the question on the record. The question is answered on the record with a court reporter, and then they go back to deliberation. So there's some other procedural problems here that lend to having a grand jury be abused or weaponized against the public, and that seems to be what's going on. Them being told that they can't be in the public part of the courtroom is the same thing that happened to us on June 17th when I was first threatened with arrest by a plainclothes Virginia Beach detective. So there's a terrible unjust thing going on here where something that was set up to be in control of the people, for the people, has been taken by the judiciary and terribly mismanaged. And what you're seeing is that the sheriff's deputies are literally the guard dogs for the bad behavior. And it just makes me sad in my heart. I'm like, do you really not understand what's going on here, or what is happening truly? Because we the people are getting I don't even know the right word. It's, Lady Justice is being sodomized or violated. I'm sorry to use such coarse terms, but that's what's happening. And the end result is this reality we're living in, which deception is the norm. They've normalized deception and destruction and tyranny and told us there's nothing we can do about it. And our Constitution, our history, natural law, common law all says otherwise. And this is where this battle is being centralized. And what's going on here is going on in probably every other county and jurisdiction across the United States. I don't want to be too general. Maybe there are some counties that things are going right, and that's good on them. But I'm getting a sense that this is an overwhelming problem. So we live and act we are one nation under God, but we live and act locally. The strategy here is to break the chain locally in one place and see that light of truth spread as an example. And we're trying to pioneer the process. So part of my background is as an engineer and an inventor. I have 7 different patents from around the globe. And so I look at complex systems and say, what's wrong here and where's the opportunity to fix it? And from a strategic standpoint, we the people need to begin to talk about focusing our efforts and coordinating our efforts to force our rights, because they're obvious. It's black letter law, that's here that says that the grand jury belongs to the people. That's Scalia's words. So that's kind of where we're at. I'm sorry to have interrupted.
No, I was gonna add to what he said, about this going on in many different places. So Newport News, I experienced it, as well as I experienced it in New Kent County. Today, I've been watching Aldo experience it in Virginia Beach for 2 years. This is a problem everywhere, 100% all over. It's a way to just shut us down. Make us walk in line. It's control. The moment 2 parties enter a courtroom, for example, a divorce, and we can't figure it out, we're supposed to go and get help. Well, when I went to get a divorce with my ex-wife now, first thing the mediator that they have on paper says is, you guys don't agree? And there was actually something that he should, if he was there to help, when speaking on the mental health position that my ex-wife was in, he should have done something at the moment when he heard what I mentioned to him was going on with my ex-wife. And instead of doing anything to help, the first thing he said was, you guys don't agree, time to get attorneys. He goes back to what Aldo said. Then the attorneys feeding their families or going for the fight to keep going. What are they gonna do? Stop the job? I mean, how many construction workers do you know that stop work when it's to feed their family? So I mean, this is the problem. It's a big problem.
SG, if I may, I think there's something that should get read in. It's called black letter law, and it's some stuff from the grand jury belongs to the people. May I?
Please.
So black letter law refers to the fundamental well-established legal principles that are widely recognized and accepted without dispute. These principles form the foundation of the legal system, providing clear and straightforward rules that guide judicial decisions in legal practice. These foundational rules ensure consistency, predictability, and fairness in the application of the law. The grand jury is in the Bill of Rights in the Fifth Amendment. There's a document that summarizes Anthony Scalia's order from the United States versus Williams 1992 case, and the summary of the title is "The Grand Jury Belongs to the People." And let me read you a couple of Scalia's quotes that I think are important for people to understand. So in the Supreme Court United States case of United States versus Williams, Justice Anthony Scalia, writing for the majority, confirmed that the American grand jury is neither part of the judicial, executive, nor legislative branches of government, but instead belongs to the people. It is in effect a fourth branch of government, governed and administered to directly, directly by and on behalf of the people, American people, and its authority. The copy's hard here. From the Bill of Rights and acts of the grand jury is the consent of the people. So there's another quote. The grand jury is mentioned in the Bill of Rights, but not in the body of the Constitution. It has not been textually assigned, therefore, to any of the branches described in the first three articles. It is a constitutional fixture in its own right. In fact, the whole theory of its function is that it belongs to no branch of the institutional government, serving as a kind of buffer or referee between the government and the people. That's one of his quotes. Another one says, thus, citizens have the unbridled right to handle their own grand juries and present true bills of indictment to a court, which is what we tried to do today and were denied, which is then required to commence a criminal proceeding. Our founding fathers presciently thereby created a quote-unquote buffer that people may rely upon for justice when public officials, including judges, criminally violate the law. Again, another Scalia quote. So that's the essence. There's some more of that, but that's kind of what's going on, is that we're using the mechanisms that we have, but we're being denied.
Remarkable and powerfully simplistic and elegant in nature. The framers really did know what they were doing.
Yeah.
Master
Thanks,
Sergeant
Steve.
Stagg, I have
Yeah.
one final question. I'm going to direct it to you first and then sort of let you turn it over to the group here. But for those patriots out there that want to get involved in what amounts to a Virginia Beach pre-tyrannical or tyrannical situation now occurring, where can they go to support and learn more about the work, and what do you recommend they do?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll make this easy for your audience. I have, Aldo mentioned earlier about the courtofpublicawakening.org it's a fantastic blueprint for what we're doing in this movement and what we're doing here in Virginia on how we're fighting this system. I'm going to hold this up to the camera here and for a screenshot opportunity for your viewers. And this is four websites. Hopefully I have that in a decent spot that you can see. Can you read all four of those? Yeah.
Very clearly.
So, yeah, great. Yeah, and the aldoforsheriff.org. Aldo's also created there's a website called courtcomplaints.info. We mentioned earlier that if you have been violated by the system, so to speak, you have complaints about judiciary action, attorney action, that's a good place for people to go and voice their complaints. And flashjury.org is a great place that we had a really good mechanism. You heard some examples earlier from Victor and Pamela about how they were able to kind of get a little awareness, a respect. They have these lanyards. If you show you, if we could see your lanyard there, Victor, called flashjury.org juror. And we also have, the Flash Jury also has the stickers that we've put on notebooks that say flashjury.org on there. And the mechanism here for flashjury.org is for everyday patriots to be inside the courtrooms. And it's a way of reverse intimidation of the judicial system in a way that they typically intimidate the people. Well, when you're sitting there with lanyards and notebooks and pens and you're taking notes while judges and attorneys are doing their black magic or what you have in the courtrooms, they sit up straight and they pay attention when there's people actually in the gallery taking notes to what's happening. Now, on the very top list of those websites that I had just given you, at courtofpublicawakening.org, when you go to that site, you're going to see that there is a how-to link. And inside that how-to link there's a place where we have petitions you can fill out. There's information that you can, I have my email address in there too, and I'm helping to funnel information to Aldo with our movement and so forth. And the how-to page at courtofpublicawakening.org is a really good functional spot for people to go to that are ready to take their own action. One very important thing that your listeners really need to understand about, and this is probably one of the biggest focuses of our energies now for the rest of this month, or most of it. July 25th in Richmond, Virginia, we have a hearing. I'm going to, just so that it's explained a little better, I'll turn that to Aldo about it. But there's a hearing in Richmond, Virginia on July 25th. And that hearing is Aldo, we the people, and it has, we're addressing the petitions that Aldo has written. And the more patriots and the more people that we could get to show up in support of this, the louder our voices are going to be heard in correcting the system and the situation we're in with the court systems that we're talking about here at this table today. Aldo should probably chime in right here and give you a little detail on who's involved and why this July 25th hearing is happening in Richmond. It's a very, very big, important piece for all patriots.
SG, I alluded earlier to the fact that there's sort of an exploration going on of a method or a means or a strategy for we the people. That's coming together on Court of Public Awakening. So I'd encourage your listeners or followers to check that out and follow and check it regularly. Do check the how-to page. In order of priority are things that you can click off and do. For your digital warriors that are in places far away from Virginia Beach, they can politely send an email or a phone call to one of the judicial assistants that's listed and express their views on them not being slaves or them not appreciating what's happening or whatnot. All those details are there. I would stress to your followers that character is important. Again, that's listed on that page. But as you watch the Court of Public Awakening page evolve, it will become a strategy that is open source. It's meant for other patriots to duplicate it in their jurisdictions. We do this right and we crack it in one place, it will spread, and there will be other aggrieved parties, other patriots who will come together, learn from what we've done and teach us. And that's the power of the people we have. So if you scroll down to the bottom of the Court of Public Awakening page, you'll see an image of a fish. And it's a school of fish that have learned to form into a larger fish to eat the king predator, which is the shark at the time. And the caption says, when the people understand what this is, everything has changed. So at the top of that page, you see this jury thing. It says, look, as a jury, we the people protect your natural, common, and constitutional rights. We've got to learn. We got to step up our game in how we coordinate, learn from each other, and share with each other to evolve our methodologies quicker than the status quo can impede us. And I think that's kind of where we're at now. We're at the precipice of that. And with organizations like yourself, and I appreciate your good work, it's all of us together. We do different parts. You are a mouthpiece for this. We have been in the trenches figuring it out. Connect the two, and let's watch and see the magic that happens. So on July 25th, will be a hearing agreed by both parties. I will be arguing against the Assistant Commonwealth's Attorney, and it will be in front of a retired Judge Spencer in Richmond in the courthouse. The details are on the page. That was the first open petition I filed. It targeted the core of the break in the accountability system. We're trying to force the Virginia Bar Association to release the last 5 years of all the complaints against attorneys and judges to the public, so that the public can organize and take appropriate actions to lawfully get these matters addressed. And by the way, I've coined a four-word phrase that's important. We're taking lawful, coordinated liberty actions, which means one, everything is always lawful, first and foremost. That disables the other side's ability to discredit you or to threaten you. Two, coordinated, do not do it alone, do it in a group. Make sure you have a consensus, preferably of 4 or more. That's in the grand jury procedures. I think that gets back to a biblical quorum in a sense. Liberty minded. Why are you doing what you're doing? You're doing to preserve and solidify and grow our liberties. And the last thing is action. You have to take action. There's this phrase out there that everybody knows. It says, all evil needs is for good men or people to do nothing. I would append to that good people or men or women can be distracted doing the wrong thing. So meaning they're good people, they're trying to do stuff, they're in the trenches, but they're doing the wrong stuff. By rubbing elbows and talking, preparing strategies, see where we're at, these people that are on the fringes that might be distracted will start to focus, and you'll start to see that larger predator fish form, and we'll get to our destiny, which, if you want to tie this back to biblical stuff, we are destined to see justice to the nations. That is what is upon us. But it will come from the coordination of we the people, and that is our Creator's original intent and design. So we are playing His playbook.
Powerfully spoken and a straightforward strategy for success. Thank you all so very much for joining me on a tumultuous day. I know that you have a lot of work ahead of you, and for patriots out there that wish to get involved in the fight, I hope you very much enjoyed the conversation we've had. Navigate to the websites, learn a little bit more about what's happening in Virginia Beach, learn a little bit more about what's happening all over the country. Together, we put the puzzle. Thank you, everyone. I'll be back with
Thanks,
you.
Becky. Thank you, SG. Appreciate it.
God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.